to you about BDD. That's one of the things I talk about. There's a bunch of other things I talk about as well, and so I wanted to give you some options. So I'm being adaptive. Do you see that? Contextual, how about that? So we could talk about BDD. That's the thing we could talk about. We could talk about why I don't think Agile scales and why scaling Agile is a silly idea. We could talk about what I've been doing over the last couple of years, scaling delivery to 400 or 500 people. Clue, not Agile, right? Or Agile isn't the whole solution. We could talk about why I think that the metaphor that we use for software development, which is based on civil engineering, is fundamentally broken and a better way of looking at how we reason about software. Okay, so there's 4 things we could talk about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through them again, and what I want you to do is just put your hand up for the one that you think you want to hear about, and then I've queued them up, right? I thought I'd be a little bit outrageous and queue them just in case, yeah? So I don't care what I talk about. I love just talking and hanging out with interested people. So all of you guys have chosen to be here rather than home watching telly, so thank you, epic. So I want to give you the most useful evening I can, is my goal. So who wants to hear about about the value proposition for BDD, which is this, how to sell BDD to your boss? Okay, few people. Okay, who wants to hear about why Agile doesn't scale? Right, about half of you. Who wants to hear about, in spite of that previous statement, how you can scale delivery? Or how I've been scaling delivery? Oh, that's pretty close. And who wants to hear about why I think the metaphor of software is broken? Okay, I think we've got a tiebreaker around the 2 scaling ones. So, why Agile doesn't scale? So everyone gets to revote. Why Agile doesn't scale? Okay, how to do delivery at scale? Okay, I'll be just a second. I'll see if I can squeeze both of them in. So let's see. Hello everyone, I'm going to talk to you about business mapping, which is exactly the scheduled talk and was totally planned. Everything previously, we have always been at war with Eurasia, okay? No, so the backstory to this then is it does have a BDD hook. So about 12 years ago, I was working at ThoughtWorks with a chap called Chris Matz, who is a phenomenal business analyst. And he then has since become he kind of coaches portfolio management, product management, you know, big, scary, up there in the organization. And we stayed friends. He left ThoughtWorks in, I don't know, mid-2000s. I stayed there till the end of the 2000s. And so we stayed in touch, we're good friends. And every now and then we just get together, typically over wine, because you should, and just catch up. And so we were chatting. I said, so what have you been up to? And he said, well, I've been at we're being recorded, so I don't know how NDA, no, it's all fine. He's already done loads of talks about it. So he'd been at Skype at the point when they were acquired by Microsoft, and there was this huge, you can imagine, huge transformation piece going on. And he and a chap called Tony Grout built a delivery model that scaled to 1,500 engineers, okay, across hundreds of teams. And it was working pretty well. And I was working at a large American bank, and I was working at around the sort of 400 or 500 person level across tens of teams. And we got together and we were describing what we've been up to, and it turns out we've been up to exactly the same thing. So we'd independently developed the same model for doing delivery. And we got really excited about that, because the last time that happened was BDD. So he was my co-conspirator on BDD. So we said, okay, well then, so we spent most of last year kind of shaping it, articulating it, figuring out how to describe it to people. And then we got really excited, and so that's what we've been doing. So this talk is as far as we've got. Okay, this is how we think you can scale delivery. And well, I'll explain. So like my side of it, I tend to be sort of from the program level inwards, so from around about the kind of 50 to 80 people into the delivery model, and then the technical stuff, and then into the DevOps and operations and release and all that. Chris is more on the business side, show me the money, all that kind of thing. So which will unfold as we go. So this is hence business mapping. So first of all, let's set the context. Okay, so who here is involved in some kind of agile transformation or on some kind of agile journey? He says, asking Agile MK in a slightly... Oh, that means everyone is. That's called selection bias. Okay, that's called selection bias or sampling bias. Yeah. So okay, most of us. So the context is we've got some kind of transformation underway. Okay, that's already a given thing. If I stand here, can I see that screen? Yes, I can. Brilliant. That's got some notes on it that I won't be able to read from here because I'm middle-aged and I can't read anymore. So I'll just look at the screen. Oh, hello. What's going on there? My screen's just my clicker's just going mad. So, Lean Agile transformation underway. We've had several successful deliveries. Okay, for values of several and successful. But we've had at project scale, at team scale, we've done a few things and we've pulled it off a few times and people are starting to get a bit excited. So Agile is now normal. The vocabulary around Agile is now normal. That doesn't mean we're any good. That just means the vocabulary is normal. So for instance, what I've done is I've taken all of my project managers, sent them on a 2-day residential class and they've come back as Scrum Masters. And I've taken all my business analysts and sent them on a different 2-day residential class and they've all come back as product owners and now we're Agile. Right? What could possibly go wrong? Yeah? So, but Agile at least is now normal. So what's the challenge then? The challenge is, there's two parts to the challenge, okay? There's an organizational side and there's a business side and there's a people side. And this is where you see the difference between Chris and myself. So Chris is, show me the money. He's up in the business. He doesn't give a crap about people, right? He's a sociopath. Well, he's not really. He's a lovely guy, but he doesn't actually care about people nearly as much as he cares about how the business works. Me, I'm all touchy-feely, huggy, get the people happy and everything else will be fine. Yeah, he doesn't get that. So on the business side then, the challenge looks like this. The challenge is, sorry, sleepy am I? Eyelash. Scaling the work. Okay, so the business challenge is scaling the work. How do we scale? What does planning in the large look like? Okay, what does it mean to define a program of work? And by program, I mean like around your kind of 60 to 100 people. That sort of scale. How do you we've gotten pretty good at getting 8 to 10 people pointing in the same direction. Okay, we've solved that. We spent 15, 20 years getting good at that. What we're not good at is getting 80 to 100 people pointing in the same direction. What we think we do is we have just lots and lots of little teams and it will work itself out. But what ends up happening is it doesn't. Okay, or it becomes really, really messy. So what does it mean to do planning in the large? What does it mean to define a program? What does it mean to manage a portfolio? So this is where I have multiple programs and I'm making trade-offs across those programs. I'm managing risk, okay? On the people side, people talk, so how do we grow people? In a wide, flat organization where we take out all those middle manager layers and all that kind of stuff, I used to have a career. Right? Back in the day, I was Dev 1, Dev 2, Dev 3, Senior Dev, Architect, Manager. Right? That's me for the next 20 years. I'm all set. Yeah? Now I'm a team member. I'm a team member. What do you do? I'm a member of a team. Right. So what are you doing next year? I'm a team member. Yeah? So it's just like really hard to figure out what you do and where you are. So people get lost in Agile. Right? I don't understand what it means to grow a career. I don't understand what it means to navigate the organization and navigate my career when we're doing all this Agile stuff. How do I grow? And bottom line, how do I get promoted? How do I get paid more? Right? I know I've been doing this stuff for the last couple of years in this company and I know I've learned a load of stuff and I know I'm more valuable to you. And you know I'm more valuable to you and we both agree that, and so then what? And then it all becomes really subjective and harder to measure that stuff. So let's take a look at the inputs then. So what have we got? We've got, on the organization side, we've got KPIs. And these are like the organizational KPIs. So the things that steer the enterprise. So things like, so for instance, Skype has a funnel. So they have a funnel of, you've got like casual users, registered users, subscribers, premium subscribers. Okay? And each one of those things is more valuable to Skype. They make more money. And you also then have domestic and business users, right? And so across each of those axes, I could say, in each of those cells, if you like, has two parts. It has new people and churn. So I can look at I can say for the next couple of quarters, I want to focus on reducing churn for domestic subscribers. So I think that we're losing more people than we should be losing to FaceTime or Hangouts or whoever the competition is, and we should focus on reducing that churn. And so everyone mobilizes around that. Okay, so that's your KPIs. Near and midterm goals. And then you also have the other inputs are things like your hard constraints. So an external hard constraint might be regulatory or compliance constraints. Structural constraints might be, we've got a team in Bratislava, a team in Brighton, and a team in wherever else, right? So geographically disperse people, people working across different time zones, language barriers, those kind of things. So there may be some hard constraints there. On the people side, on the people side, I'm looking at skills and capabilities, okay? I'm looking at what can people do? What do they know? Right? And this isn't just hard skills and capabilities. This is, they may be really good at navigating the organization. They may be really good at influencing. They may have a great network, yeah? They may be really good at helping other people do things. I was talking to someone earlier on who's like, I couldn't be more coach. Everything about everything she says is like, I'm a coach. I want to go and make people amazing. Help people be amazing. That excites me. Like really meeting genuine coaches excites me because there's too many not genuine coaches. But also not just what you can do, what do you want to do? Right? So what are your aspirations? What are your career aspirations, personal aspirations? What do you want to be when you grow up? Yeah? So that's the inputs. So now here's where business mapping parts ways with all of the scaled agile snake oil. Oops, out loud voice. Right? Is there's a bunch of assumptions. Okay? So the main assumption is this idea of a feature team or a Scrum team. So we're going to we're going to have my 200 people, and I'm going to have teams of 8 to 10 people, and there's going to be 2 pairs of developers, and it's going to be a tester and a business analyst, and it's a cookie cutter team shape. Okay, and so I set my organization up doing that. That's usually week 1. Yeah, we're going to transform our 200 people into a bunch of Scrum teams. What was wrong with what they had before? We don't know. We don't measure anything, but we heard Scrum teams is good. Okay, so that leaves you with a couple of problems. That works at a single team scale. Where it doesn't work is when you have more work than fits into a team. Because now I've got 2 problems. The first problem I have is how do I divide the work up into the teams? How do I stream the work through the teams I've got? Which is that's a parallelizing. This is a concurrency problem. Concurrency is really hard, right? There's a reason that serial printers won. Yeah, is that you can send individual characters down the wire really, 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 really fast. Okay, sending big gobs of wires down loads of pins and then coordinating at the other end is just a mess. Okay, so if you can do things serially really fast, you win at doing things. So, but that's not as bad as this problem, which is how do I then tie it all together and make money, right? And turn it into stuff. So, and each of these teams has independent product owner, because we have product owners, and this product owner reports to this person in the business, this product owner reports to this person in the business. So this team needs a piece of work done by this team, and it's number 4 on their backlog, and it's been number 4 on their backlog for the last 3 sprints, and it's going to carry on being number 4 on their backlog because it's not on their product owners. They don't care, right? And so on. And so you get hidden dependencies and hidden blockers. And if you look at each individual team's velocity or other vanity metrics, how much work they're shoving through, they're shoving loads of work through. If you look at how long an individual work item takes to get from there to there, it can be months and months and months. Because we're not tracking lead time, we're tracking activity. Yeah, we're looking in the wrong place. So what if we reimagine the problem? What if we said, we're going to go beyond feature teams? All I know is I've got a bag of work that's about 100 people's worth of work and a bag of about 100 people, and I'm going to shake it all up and I'm going to see what happens. Okay? I'm not going to constrain myself to cookie cutter feature teams. I don't know how we're going to solve it yet, but let's just take that constraint away. Okay? Does anyone know where feature teams came from? The idea of, or Scrum teams. Does anyone know where the idea of cross-functional teams, what the rationale is behind having a cross-functional team? Hand at the back, go on. So cross dependencies between teams, yeah, that's. But I'm talking about how do we, what's the rationale around having some developers, a tester, a business analyst in a team co-located and all that? Sorry. So they can deliver independently, is really close, right? I'll take that. So what the context that model came out of was a context in which everyone worked in separate silos. So you had analysts would produce a document. They'd never meet the software guys. They would pass the document on. That was the currency. And then an architect or a designer gets the document, and they use that document to generate high-level designs. and then programmers take the high-level designs and turn them into low-level designs, detailed designs, and then they turn them into code. And then testers, meanwhile, take the same requirements and turn them into... And so everything was done through documents and everything was done through handoffs. And it turns out that however efficient each of the stovepipes is, all of the delay happens in the handoffs. Okay, so this is just lean value stream mapping. This is all good stuff. Go and read about this stuff. So what someone said is, if we just bring the people to the work, okay, then bring all of the people required to do a piece of work together and they can just do it. They'll get on with it. And then the work gets done. So it's the equivalent of in a motor race, right? So the car comes screaming into the pits and I'm front left wheel nut 2 and Ria's front left wheel nut 3, and we've both got our thing, and we go jumping and go like this, and the wheel comes off, and we put the new wheel on, and meanwhile the guy's filling up the gas, and boom, off it goes, right? Or we go, okay, car comes in, we go, oh, where are the wheel people? Wheel people, go, okay, right, and then take the car along and move it to the fuel people, and then you go on to the next, right? It's dreadfully slow. It's more efficient, but it's dreadfully slow. So that's all well and good at a team scale, right? The lean principle is called moving the people to the work. This is what lean does fundamentally different from traditional Henry Ford, Wilmslow Taylor type models, is they have a conveyor belt and the work moves along from person to person, and there's a dreadful amount of delay in the handing off. If you swarm the people around the work, the right people around the work gets done really well. It's less efficient than having people in little buckets, but it's much more effective. Okay? So this is the principle that led to Scrum teams, but what we've then done is we've gone, oh, Scrum teams is great, we should all do Scrum teams or feature teams, rather than we should apply the principle of moving the people to the work to this big bag of work. That's really how we solve it. And there we go, going to get into some economics. I'll be brief. We want to optimize for a thing called risk-adjusted return on capital. Who's heard of ROI? All heard of ROI, right? Return on investment, or also known as return on capital, right? ROI, ROC is, if I invest this money, I will get this thing back, okay? The bit that's missing from that, it's a very blunt instrument, the bit that's missing from that is when. When will I get my return? Yeah. So if I invest this money, a little bit of this money, and I get some return, and I invest a little bit more and get some return, I still end up investing the same amount, and I still end up getting the same return. But if I get that return much sooner, or incrementally along the way, I have much less what's called value at risk. Right? I've got a lot less money in the game. If we get 90% of the way through this invest, and then the thing fails, I lost all of that money. Right? If I'm delivering iteratively, incrementally in small pieces, and each of those small pieces is starting to pay off, then I bring the point in time when I get that revenue forward. Okay, so this is there's financial models around this. This is how you price bonds. So anyone who's got a financial background, this is bond pricing. So I want to optimize for risk-adjusted return on capital, which means I want to deliver small pieces in small batches as whenever they're ready. Right, so the idea of having sprints or monthly drops or whatever else, if something is ready at the end of week 1 and I'm then going to wait another 3 weeks before I release it, I just wasted 3 weeks of time. Or rather, I had that value at risk for another 3 weeks. Yeah? So economically, it's a bit bonkers. So I want the option to deploy things as soon as I want. Okay? So let's reimagine the problem. So delivery mapping is, I think it's effective, I think it works, and business mapping, I think they work because they focus on a particular part of the change cycle. So when you want to change something, there's essentially 3 stages to change, okay? So the first stage is visualize. Turn the lights on, okay? Who here has done value stream mapping in any sense in their workplace? Okay, too few of you. Value stream mapping is the single simplest thing. You just have post-its in your back pocket. You get all the people who are involved in a process in a room, and you give them the post-its and you say, map the process. And they just stick on the wall what the pieces of process are. And then you say, how long do each of those things take? And then you say, what's the waiting time between each of those? And that's a value stream. There's way more sophisticated ways of doing this. That will work fine. Okay? What it does is it demonstrates how bad your process is. Right? It doesn't tell you how to solve it, it just tells you it's turning the lights on. So I think of it as like you're in a room full of tigers, okay, and I switch the lights on. Yeah, you were already in a room full of tigers. That wasn't my fault. Yeah. Now you know. Yeah. Don't blame me. Although someone did point out that now the tigers can see you as well, which is probably not ideal. But tigers, they're cats, right? They can see in the dark anyway. You were already toast, right? At least now you know. So visualize is about turning the lights on. I did a really simple value stream map of a server, of the process in one company I was working in to get a server. It took 30 days to get a server, 6 weeks roughly, which is, in some organizations pretty quick. If you're a trading firm, that's infinity. Right? I can have an idea and the entire window of that idea goes in a week. So I need to be able to turn around servers quickly. And they were getting really stuck. It was taking 30 days to get a server. So we mapped out the process. And just by mapping out the process, the guy that owned the process, the infrastructure manager, he said, I've never seen it laid out like this. We could just change this and it would take a third off the time. So they did, like the next day. And then they did that for a week or so. And someone else said, look, we could do these things in parallel and we don't need to do that thing anyway. And then that brought another third down. So now it was 12 days. So now you could guarantee a server within 12 days. And then someone else who actually works in a data center, his job is carrying these massive servers around and putting them in racks. He said, well, why don't we we only really build 3 kinds of server, right? We build what they call the money makers, which are like super high spec, state-of-the-art blah that sit in the actual exchanges. We build those. We build your regular kind of donkey work servers, just regular standard commodity servers. And we have dev boxes. And so why don't we just get a couple of each of those and put them in the data centers? So it's a few $1,000s in sunk cost, right? So you got to, you build those out. But that meant that the lead time for a server was now 2 hours, right? From I need a server to you'll have it before lunchtime. Still 12 days restocking. So if you had a run on one particular kind of server, but you usually know if you need a half a dozen. What you don't know is if you need one right now. Yeah. So 30 days, 2 hours. Yeah. Most processes are eye-wateringly inefficient. Ineffective, because we're looking where the action is, or we're looking where the action is, we're not looking where the action isn't. So every process, I've mapped loads of processes over about 15 years, every process I've ever mapped, I've never mapped a business process that was less than 90% waiting time. And we're busy trying to optimize the 10. No, let's just take huge chunks out of that waiting time. But you can't see waiting time. Yeah. So visualize. Visualize, turn the lights on, see where you are. Next thing we do is stabilize. It doesn't matter if you're eye-wateringly bad as long as you're consistently eye-wateringly bad. Yeah? If it takes you 8 months plus or minus 6 months to deliver something, I can't work with that. Yeah? Because I don't know if any changes we make are going to improve that or not. So stabilize says, let's get consistently bad. Once we're consistently bad, the fun starts. We can optimize. Okay. The problem is everyone in this room is a technologist, and so we love doing that one. And so we jump on optimize and we do it again and again and again, and we don't measure anything. Yeah, because we love optimizing. Yeah. So, and because I see loops everywhere, because everything's a system, you then go back round again, do it again. Everything about business mapping is in the visualize space. Okay. Business mapping doesn't tell you what to do. It tells you where you need to have an opinion. It doesn't tell you how to make decisions. It tells you what decisions you need to make. I have opinions on how you make decisions. You should ask me. Right? I've got loads of opinions. But it doesn't tell you what to do. It tells you where you need to be looking. So business mapping then, quick overview, and then I'll go into a little bit of detail with it. Start with initiative mapping. This is at the top of the organization. This is my dials. This is my reducing the churn of my domestic subscribers. Okay, this is at that level. I take a business metric and a KPI, and I figure out the initiatives that are going to get me there. Within those initiatives are programs of work. On the demand side of a program of work is what we call demand mapping. This is understanding what the business outcomes are, what do we want to deliver, how much do we want to invest in it. This is Katie. Katie's a programmer. You're going to meet Katie again in a minute. Katie's awesome, right? So we then do a process called skills mapping. Skills mapping is understanding what Katie can do, what she wants to do, right? Skills, aspirations, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and not just Katie, everyone. And then I take my skills mapping, which is my supply side, and I take my demand mapping, which is my demand side, and I put it all in a bag and I shake it all up. And I build a program around that, and that's called delivery mapping. Okay, that's not a hazardous waste sign. That's a Venn diagram that we'll come back to in a bit. Okay, so then, let's unpack some of this. Initiative mapping then. So I'm going to take my my business KPI, and I start with a hypothesis. I say, if we as an organization do this thing, that dial will move. Okay? Anyone tell me what a hypothesis is? What's the difference between a hypothesis and just a statement?
Is it like testable?
It's nearly. Is it testable? Yes. That's very close to what I'm looking for, but that's not exactly right. An hypothesis is an idea I haven't proved yet. Yes, it is, but then so is an opinion. Right? What makes it a hypothesis?
Is it the plan to test it?
It's kind of the plan to test it. So, one more. Is it theoretical? Often, right? Or
it's the science thing. Something is only a scientific theory if there is an experiment you can do to disprove it.
Thank you. Falsifiability. Right? The thing that makes it a hypothesis is that it's falsifiable. Science is asymmetric. You can't prove anything. You can just disprove stuff. Right? We totally knew how gravity worked for 300 years until 1905 when we totally didn't. Right? When Einstein said, yeah, but no. And they were, oh, crap. Oh, Newton, come on. And science works like that. So everything we do is increasingly better guess, right? Increasingly better assumption. So this is a falsifiable assertion. If we do this work, we believe that dial will move. We should be doing work to falsify that. The more work we do to falsify and fail to falsify it, the more confident we are that that was correct. That's how science works. People spend their entire careers trying to falsify something and failing. And they go, epic, we're feeling pretty bullish about that now. Within that then, I have a bunch of initiatives. And so I might have a marketing initiative, an engineering initiative, I might have a sales initiative, I might have an operations initiative, each of which is, again, this is a hypothesis. We believe if we do this, it will move this, which will move this. Right? I'm building a chain of hypotheses. If I can break any of this, I just stop doing that work. Even if we deliver this brilliantly, it won't move the dial we want to move. Yeah? And then finally, I get into programs, and again, each of these programs has a hypothesis. We are doing this program in order to achieve this outcome, which will move this dial. How soon could we know that's not true? Yeah? So, here's an example. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. This evening is also sponsored by Lockets, which are awesome. I want to make a movie. I want to make a bunch of movies. I want to make Avengers Assemble. I want to make Avengers Age of Ultron. I want to make Captain America. I want to make Iron Man 4. All of these involve stuff happening in New York. So I'm going to need some help from the various services in New York. So police, ambulance, air support, fire department, all that kind of, I need roads sealed off, I need people on hand for crazy stunts. And so what I do is I look at these movies and I say, what kind of help am I going to need here? And so we come up with some ideas of, for instance, Captain America, going to need some police. Avengers Assemble is going to need some more police. Iron Man 4 has got, what's his name? Robert Downey Jr. in it. It's going to be like a swarm of fans trying to just go, we're going to need huge amounts of police, right? So I can look at this and I can say, the movie I want to make next is Iron Man 4. Oh, wonderful. Man walks up with a glass of water. Fantastic. That's the banker right there. But if I just go up to the New York Police Department and say, I'm going to need 35 units of policing, they're going to laugh at me, right? Do you know how much violence there is in this city, yada, yada. So maybe what I do is I maybe make Avengers Assemble first, which is going to require some police interaction, and then I build a relationship with them, and then when I go back and ask for 35 of those, we've now got a relationship. So I can start to do things a bit strategically. If you look at this, everything along the top here are really constraints. Yeah? So there's only a limited number of police, ambulance, air, fire department. In our software world, there's only a limited number of web developers, DBAs, network engineers, people with certain skills, or groups of people with certain skills. Okay, so there are constraints. And for each of these guesses of how much of those constraints we're going to need, that's a conversation. Right? There's no point me making Age of Ultron first, because I don't need to talk to the police for that. Right? So then if I make Age of Ultron and then I make Iron Man 4, they're going to laugh at me. We still don't even know who you are. Yeah? So each of these is a conversation about constraints. So this gives me an idea then of the context I'm working in. So now let's take an individual program. I'm going to plan several quarters out. Now Q plus 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to plan a year out. Okay. When you first start doing this, don't do that. Plan a few months out. So get good at doing this on a monthly basis and then start stretching it out to a quarterly basis. Okay. So what I ask with this is I get a bunch of people together, typically the program team. So I want technical representatives, like delivery representatives. I want business representatives. I want all of the other ancillary folks as well, security, compliance, legal, all of the other people who are going to have an interest in this. And we mark out across our year outcomes that we want. And I mark them out as diamonds because it looks a lot like a Gantt chart. And it makes people who are used to using Gantt charts feel safe. And there's a huge amount to be said for making people feel safe. Okay. And so we have this, these are my diamonds. This is what's called a tornado graph. So have you ever seen these like on the weather? They have like the east coast of the US and they have like a tornado as a dot in the sea. And there's a line that comes off it like that. And it shows you, how many hours out where it could be. Right. And the further out it is, the wider that cone is. Yeah. And then the next day it's moved to there and then there's another cone going out. So the closer I am to now, the more certainty I have. And it's exactly the same here. Those two diamonds at the front are probably things that are in flight and that are finishing in the next quarter. The next ones out in the middle here are sort of planned and we're kind of feeling fairly optimistic about those. This is just a punt, right? But that's okay because we're going to do all this again in the next quarter and then the things are going to have moved into relief. And so we're always working with increasing uncertainty as we go out and we're okay with that. So having said what you want, I then ask you how much? How much do you want that? And the unit we use for this is about a team for about a week. So let's say a team's about 10 people, right? The team we're going to assemble around this is going to be about 10 people. It's not, but let's assume it is. Let's say the fully loaded cost for a person is about $1,000 a day, right? So that's your salary, your desk, your computer, your all of that stuff, the care and feeding. And so over a week, that's about $50,000. Okay, very rough numbers, deliberately very rough numbers. That's your unit of investment. That immediately takes a bunch of conversations off the table. Yeah. So if it's plus or minus a couple of days, I don't care. If it's a tiny piece of work, have it for free. It'll be fine. Yeah. Plus or minus a person, I'm over it. Right. So roughly, and so Chris has this lovely term for these. He calls them swags. Sweet wild ass guess. Okay. So how many swags do you want to invest in this? Right. We've only got a limited number of swags. Yeah. We haven't looked yet at skills and capabilities. We're assuming everyone can do everything, and we know that's wrong. But that's another constraint that will come in later. Right now, we just know how many people, how many roughly team weeks we've got to invest over the next few quarters, and where do you want to spend those? Okay. This is where we part company with Gantt charts. So there's an assumption in the current software world, or in the historical software world, that for a given piece of work, it's reducible. Yeah, I can break it into pieces and break those into pieces. It doesn't matter if I call them work items or stories or features and put them on a backlog. It's basically a Gantt chart, right? I'm breaking this thing into small pieces, and once they get small enough, I can estimate them, and I roll it all up, and I'm done. Lie. Okay? You can't do that because the work we're doing is generative. The work we do feeds back into the work we do. Okay? It's called a complex adaptive system, and I love because Dave Snowden's going to be along here next month, talking about Cynefin, and Cynefin has a fantastic model for understanding that kind of complexity. Okay, so dynamic complexity versus detail complexity. Detail complexity is build me a hospital. Right, dynamic complexity is weather. Okay, weather has water, wind, temperature, and another thing. Pressure. There we go. That's the four things. WWTP: water, wind, temperature, pressure. That's all of weather. It's impossible to predict weather, okay, because it's complex adaptive. The system of weather affects the system of weather. Software delivery is the same. So all I can say for each of these is which of the apps, which of the systems, what part of my estate is going to be affected by doing this work. And it may not be apps and systems, it may be external vendors, it may be parts of the organization. But what are the factors that I'm going to need to consider to execute on those pieces of work. Okay, nearly there. And so now those apps and things that are affected, I say, well, what are the skills and capabilities that I'm going to need to do work in that space? I might need mainframe skills. I might need deep knowledge of that particular application. I might need to know how aeroplanes get routed through Europe, right? I might need to know a bunch of domain knowledge. I might need relationships with particular vendors in order to move this forward. But these now become the skills and capabilities I'm going to need. So that's my demand side. Skills mapping. This is now my supply side. Remember Katie? It's Katie. Katie's awesome. So you say, okay, so Katie, tell me about yourself. What do you do here? And she says, well, I'm a developer. She says, I'm in a team. I'm working on a product, which is on a platform. I work in a department in an organization. So, wow. So Katie is immediately, she's now this six-dimensional, this multi-dimensional human being. And the fun bit is across any of those dimensions, I can ask her, what are the skills and capabilities that make you interesting, that make you different from someone else here? So I don't want an exhaustive list of developer skills. That's no use to anyone. What I want to know is if I were deciding who to assign to which work, or if people were deciding for themselves which work they wanted to assign themselves to, what would the differentiators be? Okay? And that ends up as a list of skills. And so I build out this list of skills, and this looks like a bloody big spreadsheet because it's usually a bloody big spreadsheet, right? But essentially it's a very simple, it's self-selecting, self-scoring. And for each of those skills across each of those dimensions, so let's see, so I'm a developer or a tester or an analyst or whatever, that's your role, that's your core skill, your core responsibility. In a team, so this is like how well do you play in a team? What do you like in a team? But it's also the T-shaped thing. If you're a developer in a team, how good are you at the database skills and the testing skills and the analysis skills? Because then that means that I understand the dynamics of my team better. Working on a product, so this is domain knowledge. How well do you understand the product, the domain, the customers, the business need, all of that stuff? On a platform, this is now the strategic technical stuff. So it's great that you're a C# programmer. How well do you know our core internal libraries, systems, services, those kind of things? And that, again, may be relational. It may be how well do you know the people who run those things? Because I might need to want to do work there as well. In a department, how well does Katie navigate the organization? Yeah? What's her network like? What's her influencing skills like? Can she cause work to happen outside of her sphere? And finally, in an organization, so the organization has values, has opinions about things. How well aligned are her values and the organization's values? Right? How happy is she going to be here? And for each of these skills, I want her to rate herself on a really simple scale. I used to use the Dreyfus model for this. It turns out it's way more complicated than you need. So instead, I just use this. 0, 1, 2, 3. None, read, write, teach. That's most of what you need. So C#. Can't even spell it. One, I can look at someone else's C# code. Maybe I'm a tester, and I'm not a programmer, but I can look at someone else's C# code, and I can have an opinion about where a bug might be. That's really useful. 2, I write C#. I code C#. 3, I could teach someone else to code C#. But then you applied something like influencing skills. Wouldn't even know it if I saw it. I can tell when someone's influencing outside of their area. I can influence outside of my upwards or across. I can teach people influencing skills. So it's a really useful, very rough guide to where we are. And I ask Katie and ask a bunch of other people, and we end up with a thing that looks like this. And I actually asked Katie 3 things here. So this is one of the platform questions. Platform sets of skills on the XYZ platform. So let's take a look. So the first question is, where would you rate yourself? So it says, I can build things, and I can use stuff in this, I can work in this architecture. The number in brackets is, if I were to ask your peers, what would they say? Right, it's called moral reasoning. It's a very, very simple way of getting a balanced result. Okay? So you look at like the Katie with APIs. She says, I could teach APIs. My peers will just say I'm good at them because I haven't had an opportunity. That might suggest frustration. That might suggest she wants an opportunity to teach this, but she hasn't had one. Conversely, let's look at Chris with integration. He says, my peers think that I can do integration and I know how to do the integration on this platform. I don't. I can see where it's done and I can see how it works, but I wouldn't be confident to do it. And that suggests a risk, right? So Chris is saying, I've seen other people who do know how to do stuff on this platform and I'm not one of them. Right? So now we've got a misperception of Chris that if we needed it, he could do it. And he's like, no, I couldn't. Yeah. So this is a really useful, very lightweight model for figuring out where people are at. The number after the dotted line is aspirational. Where do you want to get to with that skill? So Katie says, well, I get the architecture, I can do it. I'd like to teach it, actually. The API stuff, I'm fine with it. I'm kind of over it. I don't really want to go anywhere with it. Chris has never seen the architecture before, and he wants to at least be able to find his way around it. And Dan, that's me. There we go. Integration, yeah, I'm fine with integration. That's all I want to do with it, honestly. I want to get a lot better with the APIs. I can just about find. I want to get really good with the APIs. And so now you can do this. You can use this as like a dating agency, a dating system. Would like to meet. So everything in this right-hand column is would like to meet. So then, delivery mapping. So remember our diamonds? They gave us our swags. They gave us our applications and systems. Well, those now tell us the skills we're going to need. And so I put my team together and I can see immediately, again, this isn't telling me what to do. This is just visualize. Yeah. It says, well, for this skill here, I've got pretty good coverage until he goes on holiday. And then I've got one person. She can sort of find a way around, right? This one's even worse. If she goes away, I've got no one has any idea about this skill. What if this skill is critical? Yeah. I may have an imbalanced team here. Right? It's highlighting areas of risk. Yeah. So this is where the fun happens. Or for me, I think this is where the fun happens because it's all the people stuff. Delivery mapping then, we put all the people in a bag. You end up with a Venn diagram that looks a lot like this. So we've got business need, current skills, aspirational skills. And you can look at each area in this Venn diagram is interesting. So let's start in the middle. It's gold. There's a business need. It's somewhere where I have current skills, and it's something where I want to grow those skills. Okay? Fantastic. Go nuts. Build it. Yeah? Ship it. Hooray. Right? What about up here? So this is, there's a business need where I have current skills, and I don't really have any interest in growing those skills. So what does that mean? Pardon? They're not going to take ownership. They're not going to be that keen on doing it, right? But they could teach it. That's an opportunity for them to hand over that skill, which is kind of cool because they've got there's a win-win there. So I get the work done, and they now teach someone, and they go, oh, there you go, you can do it now. And this is someone who's expressed an interest in that thing. Great, I can hand it on to you. Brilliant. Going up, and then you're going, oh, great, I really like doing this. And then you'll do it for a while, and you go, oh, this is really dull. I want to teach this to someone. And so you're building a system where that happens. Likewise down here, there's a business need here for a skill that's your aspirational skill, but you don't have it right now. Guess what? That's where you learn. And so people start self-selecting into teams where they will pick up skills alongside of people who will teach them those skills. Yeah? Or when you first start doing this, you're putting the people in the teams. But essentially, as the organization matures, you can start to have people self-select into the work they want to do. Let's take a look down there. Oh yeah, so what's this one here then? What does that represent? Maybe I'm missing people. I've got a business need, it's not a current skill, and no one cares. Right? No one wants, that's your COBOL, right? That's your, yeah? Here be dragons, okay? That represents a risk. If I have a business need that requires those skills and capabilities, I don't have them and no one's interested. So what does that mean? Maybe I rent those skills in. Maybe I hire in some external people. Maybe I outsource that thing. Maybe I reimagine the problem in a way that doesn't need those skills. Yeah? Or something. Again, it's not telling me what to do. It's telling me where I need to have an opinion. So down the right-hand side, this is fun. So this bit here, this is current skills that I want to get better at, but there's no real business need. Okay, so this is elective practice. This is where I go and hang out in user groups. Right? I go to meetups. Yeah, so I spend my own time practicing a skill. Again, at the bottom here, this is an aspirational skill that I want, I don't have, and there's no business need. So this is now elective learning. This is, again, the same sort of thing. I can maybe do some online learning, or I can teach myself. As an organization, you can choose to have an opinion about that. You can say, we are going to invest in that. We're going to give everyone a day a week to do that, or whatever it is. Yeah, or we're not. But that's the thing that you can have an opinion about, which kind of leaves this one. So this is a current skill that there's no real business need for it, and you don't really want to grow it. You've done it now. It's your back pocket skill. You're doing something else. Okay, this is opportunity. In particular, this is opportunity for slaying dragons. So a quick example, I was working at a bank and they do the operations part of a bank is where it's all of the unsexy stuff once all the trading's finished. So I've got loads of people I end up with hundreds of millions of transactions that need to be matched and netted and tax and blah, and it all needs to add up to zero, and it never adds up to zero. Okay, that's how operations works. And they mostly do this with huge, complicated SQL stored procedures over hundreds of millions of rows. And this one particular gnarly, ugly stored procedure was getting bigger and bigger. And so what they would do to add a new rule is just jack it up and whack another if in there and then, let it run. And it turns out that when you've only got 2 or 3 ifs, then adding another if doesn't matter. And when you've got 30 or 40 ifs, adding another if doesn't matter. Right? So there's no point at which adding another if ever matters. So people just and so you end up with these really complicated logic in these massive slow stored procedures. And there's one that people are scared of in particular, right? It used to take about an hour and a half to run, so you had to run it at night because it would lock up the entire matching table while it did it. And they'd try and put a new rule in. It was always done as a business request. We'd come in, we need this new rule, blah, blah, blah. Here's some examples. And it would always screw up at least several times, and it just massive amount of effort in it. So one Friday afternoon, just for giggles, I think we might have been to the pub. Oh, I'm being recorded. We hadn't been to the pub. No alcohol had been consumed. I said, it's Friday afternoon, it's a bit quiet, let's just spend a couple of hours hacking on that in Python. Right? The store procedure I've seen, it looks very logic-y rather than select-y. It's got to have that feel about it that it was using the wrong. So we spent 2 hours hacking on a thing in Python, and in 2 hours we had a thing that produced the same results as the stored proc, and it ran in 5 minutes. Complete fluke. Ran in 5 minutes. So I thought that was a pretty cool spike. Anyway, bye. Went off and then came back a couple of weeks later. And in a couple of weeks, what happened is someone had gotten hold of my ugly Python spike, and now it ran in 3 minutes. They'd managed to abstract out the interesting bits, so now all of the rules were completely data-driven. And they'd turned that into a really simple web app so that now those queries were self-serve. So that work didn't even come in anymore. Yeah? And they built this facility out of a 2-hour spike. Right, of a back pocket skill I happen to have, which is Python. And I happen to know my way around SQL. Right, and so bringing those things together made a whole problem go away. And now it's gone viral, which is fun. So now that's how they do matching. And so now they used to be the crufty old legacy SQL people, and now they're the cool with it Python kids, and everyone wants to be part of the team. How about that, onions? Right? So complete fluke. Yeah, so that's delivery mapping. So that's kind of where we are. So business mapping says we start with initiative, and that drives the programs, and then so on the demand side we do that, and then on the people side, here's Katie and all the other Katies, and we build a skills map, and we put all these things into a bag, and we shake it all up, and we figure out what is the most appropriate shaping of people around work. Some of those work items are going to have a small army working on them, and that's fine, that's appropriate. Some of those things are going to have 2 people working on them for 3 days, and that's appropriate too. Yeah? But what it suggests is that the fine-grained structure of your program is a function of time, because it's a function of the work items, and they're going to change with time. Yeah? So what you can do with your demand map is you can say, I can drop a vertical, there, and another one there, and another one there, and I can say, well, what are the skills and capabilities I'm going to need at those points in the future? And I'm 6 months out now. I'm going to need a very different set of skills. Or 6 months out, I'm going to need a whole bunch of skills that only these 2 guys have. Yeah, which means all that work is going to get bottlenecked to these guys, and they're not going on holiday anytime soon. Sorry, right? Or we could say, we know that work's coming up, we know these are our experts, we will invest in those guys training up a bunch of other guys. So that is now Kaizen, right? That's improvement work, but you're improving the system of work through training and coaching. And that's first-class work. So that takes both of them out and the people they're teaching. But what that does is it gives me a different system of work that can now, when that work lands in 6 months' time, or 5 months' time, because it took them a few weeks to train everyone, right? When that work lands now, we've got a wide enough pipe that that's not going to be blocked. So you can use demand mapping and skills mapping to figure out what's called skills liquidity. And that's the other big piece here. Skills liquidity says, those gaps that we had on the Venn diagram, the here be dragons, yeah? There's different kinds of skills, right? If I'm light on Python skills, sticking with the Python thing, that's easy, right? I can do Python skills, that's fine. I can teach anyone in this room Python in a week. right? Not because I'm a great teacher, because Python's a spectacularly easy language to pick up. Yeah. If the skills we're light on are pricing exotic derivatives, see you in 18 months, or maybe longer. Yeah. So that's an illiquid skill. It's not an easy skill to get hold of. So then I might want to rent that skill in. I only get in an exotic derivatives pricing trader person to help me build that system, or I'm going to figure out a different way to do it. So again, all it does is it turns the lights on. It gives you an idea of where you need to have an opinion. Skills liquidity offers strategies for handling skill shortages or skill mismatches with the desired work you want to do. And the quarterly planning, the demand mapping piece, gives you a far enough rolling window that you've got a chance of shaping the organization around the work in sufficient time. So that's how far we've got with it. He says the little clicker's not working. There we go. Thank you. So we're doing this in a couple of organizations, and we're actually working together now, which is fab. So we'll just join forces a bit. And yeah, no idea where it's going to go. We're currently failing to write a Lean Pub book, along with my other Lean Pub book, which is Software Fast, which I'm also failing to write. So I'm doing lots of failing to write things. I'm feeling at least a little bit guilty, which is good. Any questions? Any thoughts? Where's the pizza?
What do you generally suggest is sort of the minimum size of the group of developers for this to be practical or useful? Like, for example, like 20, 40?
So what's the size that I'm just saying again because they're recording this. What's the size of group at which point this becomes practical? Well, this is the fun bit about Chris and I having such different data points. I started in the middle and worked outwards. So I started with a program team of about 40 people. And we were pretty aware. So what was happening was in this bank, they had about 150 people, 200 people in the UK, in London. And they had a similar size, about 250 people in New York. And they were in the middle, 2 years into their agile rollout, very typical story. And London, it was working fine. And New York, it was just a disaster. It just wasn't working at all for them. And the guys in the States were beating themselves up and feeling dreadful and all that. And it was just that Scrum was the right shape for these guys. They had a very wide, homogeneous, all the code was enterprise Java or Python or Scala or whatever. It was all the same shape. And so pretty much anyone could do pretty much anything. Over here, you had 40 to 60 completely independent stovepipe systems, each of which needed 15 years to understand what was going on. There's no way you could get generic feature teams and just point them at work, because there were all these hidden dependencies. Like, for me to get anything done, I need her expertise, and she's in a different team with a different backlog. And anyway, she's blocked on him over there because she needs another, and that was happening. So we tried it at I was trying it at a kind of 40, 50 person program level, and it just started working. We said, well, what if we just assembled the people around the work who should do the work, bearing in mind the skills liquidity piece. So it's a bit counterintuitive in terms of, so I don't take my experts and put them on the work. In fact, they're the only people who aren't allowed to do the work. So one of my principles with this is never the expert. So if you're the expert in a system, anyone else can do the work. You can coach them, right? But you don't get to do the work. Because that way I manage my key person dependencies. There's only one person who knows this thing. Very quickly, there's several people who know this thing. Chris he had 1,500 people, and he had to figure out how to make sense of all that. Yeah. So the portfolio mapping piece, I wouldn't worry about. I would actually advise, unless you've got the ear of your complete board, I wouldn't start there. So Chris and Tony Grout started there because that was their remit, right? I would just pick a program and rethink that program in terms of demand mapping. The skills mapping piece, again, you can start ghetto. Start with the people in the team and say, right, you people in the team, you decide which skills and capabilities across those 6 dimensions are useful, are relevant for this program of work, so that we can make sensible choices about who gets to do what work. And so it's very lightweight. So the demand mapping piece is, the first time you do it, it'll take 2 days and everyone will hate each other. Because the first time you do anything new, it's really hard and it's like pulling teeth. After a while, you get pretty good at it. So, Chris had it. So you have, like I say, hundreds of teams would do pretty much lockstep demand mapping in a morning. every quarter. And that's just planned out the next year as a rolling 3-month plan. So you can start relatively small. I mean, I've still not done this above 500 people, which is, I mean, 500 is not bad, right? But they're still not in the thousands. Cool. Anyone else? Oh, 2 hands went up simultaneously. I'll go there. Go on.
How long do you take it to actually start working, and what other sort of risks did you face?
How long did we take to get this working, and what other risks did we face? I'll answer it the other way around. The risks we face, I think the biggest risk with anything of this is engagement. Okay, and that's why I've spent, I've said for a long time, I really obsess about getting the words right, about articulating things. So I've been, these pictures took a really long time for me to figure out what good pictures would be, what good names would be. So we iterated on the terms for all of last year. So this is where we're currently at. There's probably better names. I'm still not happy about initiative mapping. I don't, initiative mapping, KPI mapping, metrics mapping, I'm not sure. But so you've got a number of different stakeholders here. One of the massive upsides of this that we didn't realize until we did it is you re-engage with like program managers, project managers, people whose career is about managing risk. And all of the Agile fanboys came running in and went, oh, we don't need project managers, we don't need program managers, everyone get out. We'll just figure it out. And then they get to like 80 people and they're going, imagine we had the skills so that we could organize people at scale and we could manage risk across that kind of thing. Imagine there were people like that. Like, yes, you should go and apologize to them now. Right? So you re-engage all of the program managers. They're not doing what they used to do. They're doing different things, but they're using all the knowledge they have. They're just applying it differently. So, and how long did it take us? It took me, it's still an ongoing process. I mean, at the bank I was working at, we did this over a couple of years. And again, we were finding our way. We weren't implementing business mapping because it wasn't a thing. Yeah. In the same way when I first started doing BDD, I wasn't doing BDD, I was coaching teams. I would say your minimum ramp-up time, you're looking at 18 months, 2 years, I suspect, to have had enough quarters to feel confident that it's the right shape. You can start the whole thing like tomorrow, but don't start it tomorrow. Go and make a load of friends first, right? And then start it with those loads of friends. Cool. Oh, one at the back? Oh, cool. Yes. So the question is about Scrum and long-lived teams. And surely, you're flying in the face of long-lived teams, and the received wisdom is that it takes ages to get a team together and gel, and you don't want to break that team up. Is true if that team is made up of people who've never worked together before, have completely different backgrounds, have nothing in common, and you just threw them together. Okay? That bunch of people takes a long time to get used to each other. If you have a group of people who have shared values and a shared goal, okay, so it's the classic, it's the Disney movie, yeah? So, you've got the bad guy comes in to dig up the village, and the grumpy old lady and the kid with the limp and the girl with the parrot all get together and they save, they've all completely different backgrounds and value and whatever else, but they all love the village, right? And they all have a very clear goal, which is get the bad guy. And in the end, they get the bad guy, the end, bluebirds, yeah? And that's a similar model. So this is what Spotify did brilliantly with their tribes. So I'm in the tribe of streaming, right? Everyone in my tribe has the same values. We care about the same product. We're building the same thing. And they call it squads. The squad swarms around a piece of work with the sole intent of kill that work, right? Deliver that impact. And once they've done that, well, they don't disband. They have the option to disband. Remember, this is all options, right? There's no rule that says when you finish that work, you all split up again. It may be that whilst doing that, we discover we really like working together, and there's a load more work coming down the pipe that's that shape. Well, let's just point ourselves at it. Yeah, or it may be that we figured that there's certain kinds of work that we do really well together. So when something comes up like 6 months out, we both go, hey, we're really good at that thing. We should jump on that and maybe grab someone who wants to learn that skill, and we should be the team that picks that up. So the long-lived teams is only valuable as long as your landscape of work is homogeneous over time, so it doesn't change as a function of time. And generic feature teams is only viable where your landscape of work is homogeneous horizontally. It's all enterprise Java business systems or whatever. Then yeah, anyone can pick up anything. But essentially what you're trying to do with business mapping, and particularly with delivery mapping, is understand what are the skills and capabilities around particular work items and have people swarm that. And the swarming, I mean, I was in ThoughtWorks for 8 years, and you would just get dumped into teams, new teams all the time. And you knew the people hitting the ground with you had the same values. You know, they've been through the same recruiting process. I'm in there with a ThoughtWorks tester. I can lean on that person. They're a bloody good tester, right? Likewise, I'm in there with a ThoughtWorks developer, and they're going to be a pretty hot developer. So there's a bunch of assumptions any new team could make because they came from the same stable. So the forming, norming, storming thing is true to the extent that no one knows each other. Last question. There's a ton of pizza there, and I don't want to stand between a bunch of hungry people and pizza. Yes. So go on, sorry.
It seems like in the past 12 months, scaling has been something that you and I don't think anyone's really got it cracked yet. And I think what you've told us tonight is a really good some good ideas around the portfolio management part, and looking at to manage teams around that.
Yeah.
But surely the really juicy part is about how teams collaborate together and coordinate. Obviously, you mentioned about dependency as well.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, so scaling is flavour of the month, and what about things like coordinating between teams?
So my question would be, when progressing this further, what are the kind of clues or things that you're trying to
So what are the clues and themes I'm going to put in there? So the reason, so I'm going to call shenanigans on a thing here, right? Is what happened was a bunch of folks, mostly enterprise folks, mostly fairly senior enterprise folks, turned round to a load of now late middle-aged white guys who came up with the Agile Manifesto, and they said, hey, gurus, how do we scale delivery, right? And the correct answer is, I have no idea, I've not done that. I've built stuff at team scale, and we got really good at building stuff at team scale, and that's what XP, Scrum, DSDM, Crystal, Adaptive, all of those are team scale, world-class team scale methods, right? No one knows is the right answer. No one knows how to scale. But what happens is, cha-ching is what happens. And so SAFe, for instance, SAFe is Dean Leffingwell. Dean Leffingwell is a marketing guy. He's not a technical guy. He's a marketing guy that used to work at Rational selling RUP, right? And no one's buying RUP anymore because Agile. And so now he's selling SAFe, right? Now SAFe is, it's an okay place to start, right? Release trains, you know, it presupposes Scrum teams. So what Chris Matz describes this beautifully. He says, the problem with all those scaling models is they make a bogus assumption. They assume that you're constrained by money. So I've got a project or a program, and the program has a budget, and I want to get the most I can for that budget. And so the way I call shenanigans is this. Anyone in this room, I will give you infinity money. I need you to go twice as fast. Who can go twice as fast with infinity money? Right? That's not the constraint. Yeah? The constraint is the organization, it's the technology, it's the people on the ground, it's the whatever. Money isn't the constraint. Okay? So understanding and solving for constraints is the way that you're going to optimize flow through a system. Yeah? And Scrum teams, feature teams might not be useful. Certainly cost of delay suggests that release trains is a really dumb idea. Right? You should have, as soon as I have something ready to release, I should have optionality over that release. I create the option, and that option has value. Options have value, options expire, right? So finishing a piece of work, having it releasable, creates an option to release it. And that option should be part of my portfolio. Yeah? So it sounds like one of the many ways people use the word Kanban. Yes, right? Kanban is actually an exception handling model. It's a way of handling flow shortages and process starvation. So it's a completely misappropriated word anyway. And so, all right, who here is doing Kanban? Okay, who's doing Kanban? Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. If you are limiting work in process, measuring cumulative flow, you know what your cost of delay is for your backlog. You know what? Okay, one hand. Right? and I'd like to see that. Yeah, right. People cop out and they go, I don't want to do Scrum. It's got too much ceremony. I'll throw all the ceremony away and pretend I'm doing Kanban. If I've got swim lanes and cards, I'm doing Kanban. No, you're not. Right. So, but there's, Kanban is basically lean operations, and this is basically lean operations. Lean operations is a very, very sensible way to do things. Right. Optimizing for flow, optimizing to minimize lead time, sustainably minimize lead time is all of it. Everything else is just implementation detail. So yeah, and so I don't think Agile doesn't scale. You need Agile is an umbrella term for team scale delivery models. Okay, you need a substantively different thing at the program level and at the portfolio level to make sense of it all. I think you're absolutely right to be homing in on the interdependencies between things. A lot of it is about trying to schedule the work to at least surface those. So at least now you know what dependencies you're managing, and again, it's more options. Cool. And finishing on the word options means that I'm channeling Chris, and I feel good about that. So let's go and get pizza. Thanks very much.